Welcome to the Creative Jungle podcast. I'm your host, Sam.
I'm Hannah.
And today on the podcast, we have a very special guest, Alex Chisnall, host of the #1 ranked entrepreneurial podcast, Screw It, Just Do It, and who runs his own podcast agency, along with being a mentor to many startups. It feels like an honor to have a podcast guru on our show so early on. Alex, from when he used to work together in Virgin Startup, which is Richard Branson's not-for-profit entrepreneurial arm, which supports founders with advice, funding, and mentoring. He's had the likes of Holly Chucker from Not on the High Street, Richard Reed from Innocent, Jamie from Made in Chelsea and his business, and the inspirational Lewis Howes from the US.
I love.
Do you?
I love.
I read that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's so true. I really follow the podcast he does as well.
School of Greatness.
Yeah, School of Greatness is so good. So today we'll be talking to you, Alex, because you've had quite a journey through life, and we reckon that we can all learn a lot from this. From being a journalist with BBC Radio Wales to nearly 16 years as cabin crew with Virgin Atlantic, flying all over the world, to setting up your own sports injury clinic, which I didn't know you did.
Oh yeah, squeeze that in.
Yeah, squeeze it in. And finally, having your own inspiring podcast and podcast agency. I mean, it's a mouthful.
It is, I'm afraid.
Just getting started.
Yeah, absolutely. And basically, we're so excited to learn how you reinvented yourself so many times and created such a unique life.
Yeah, I think that is the phrase, to be honest with you. I think my mother actually said that to me a couple of years back, like, you've reinvented yourself, Alec. You know, I'm very proud of you. You reinvented yourself. Yeah. You know, it's 10 years since I left Virgin Atlantic and started my own business for the first time, literally 10 years back in September. So coming up to 11 years, I guess. Wow. And yeah, it's complete reinvention just through, I guess, iterations, and truly finding what I'm actually really passionate about. And it's only taken me 40 odd years, but hey, it's hope for everybody.
So yeah, I guess tell us a little bit more about what you're doing currently, because I know we touched on it, but I just know there's tons of stuff going on, and kind of a little bit about, how did you end up in podcasts?
Yeah, so definitely at the moment, like 100%, my focus is on podcasts and helping other people discover podcasts, to find their own voice, to get their message out there, to get their message heard. And I'm doing that in a number of different ways. So one through the agency, which I've called Podpreneur, called everything Podpreneur now. Just came to me. It's just one of those words that just came to me, and I just seemed to resonate with everyone. Where Screw It, Just Do It was the name of my podcast when I started, and I was kind of calling it by that name, and it just didn't seem to work, and as soon as I came up with Podpreneur, it just seemed to work for everybody. So yeah, focus is on that, and the agency was like the first part of that, and that was creating podcasts for different brands, essentially, and that could be everything from a iced coffee brand who we all know, which will be coming soon, through to the biggest zoo in Western Europe. I mean, how random is that? From iced coffee to zoos, and nails and backpacks and everything in between. So that just seemed like a logical progression when I decided to go all in on podcasting. And that was literally just from doing a physical workshop back in the days when humans used to interact with each other. Remember those days? And people just kept asking me, can you help me with this? Can I ask you this about my podcast? And I just thought, do you know what? Why don't we just do, I don't have to reinvent the wheel here. There's clearly a well-trodden path that you just do a done-for-you version. And here are the three options. One is, you do some of the work yourself, through to literally hands-free, you do everything. So did that, yeah, and I enjoyed that. But it's funny, somebody then, through a startup I was mentoring, funnily enough, asked me, they were building an education platform based on all the learnings of podcasting. So an audio-only learning platform. And it's for a company called Antler.co, who I'm an advisor for, like global tech startup generator and VC fund. And the founders asked me to be the guinea pig. And very cleverly, I didn't even realize they were doing it at the time. They somehow got me to produce my own podcast course. And in hindsight, I'm super grateful that they pushed me to do it. But at the time, it was such a ball ache to do amongst everything else I was doing. And it was literally just like wringing out every ounce of, my knowledge and perspiration and inspiration. And I was coming up to London and squeezing it in between meeting brands, for podcasts and interviews for my own podcast. But we did it, and it's out there now. And that's the more, one of the lessons I've learned over lockdown is that, I prefer working from home than being in an office all day, and I don't need to be traveling as much as I was. I was at one point, back and forth to London 3 days a week on the train, 4 hours, 2 hours there, 2 hours back. And I was like, that was never even part of the plan.
Yeah.
How does that, and things often happen like that, don't they, in life? You just like, how did I end up in this situation? And I think that's what's been great about, one of the positives for lockdown is that kind of reflection and going, actually, how do I want to work? How do I want to live? Where do I want to work? Where do I want to live?
Yeah.
And I started, as kind of alluded to earlier, this Podpreneur Facebook group just for something to do. Let's start a group and help people start the podcast. And so many people have said to me, they've been thinking about launching one, and it just gave them the nudge and the realization they had a little bit of time on their hands.
That's the same for us. Like we joined the group probably 6 weeks ago, or it was the week after lockdown, pretty much. I think we started it.
Yeah.
And that that totally gave us a spark, because we've been talking about it for quite a while. So thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no worries. You had, and I remember that, speaking about it with you, and a number of people. Podcast I now co-host called Not Just Crew. Again, that was, I think, the first one to come out of that group, and I've been chatting to the founder Trevor back in January when I was lucky enough to go on a Virgin Atlantic flight to San Francisco, and he's like, I've been wanting to do a podcast since 2004, and I was like, I don't even think they were around then. So did you invent podcasts? But I think it was like a YouTube video that can we just have on an audio platform. So I was. The more I've thought about it, and the course I did, and then doing the Podpreneur group and doing like the lives and just free live training for people, and the more I've come to the realization that what I love best is actually just teaching people. And a lot of the stuff, and you'll know this, a lot of the stuff that comes with working with bigger brands is just the hurdles and the red tape to actually get things going in the first place and signed off. And then it's like, oh, and what about this? And can you help us with this? And can you help us with that? And it's just far more straightforward dealing with individuals, I think.
Yeah.
You just go through all these different, and it was the same when I was at Virgin, you forget what it's like, but you just go through all the different departments and the hierarchies, and it's just like, I love seeing the finished product and seeing a brand produce a podcast, and seeing it as. And it's interesting, when you asked me to come on this podcast, and I'd never thought I was actually that creative in the great scheme of things. But when I look back, I know, and when you look back, I'm actually creating a piece of work, an piece of art for different people, and helping other people do the same. So it's made me really think. Been interesting. Like I said, I've done more homework on this interview than any other podcast interview.
I can't believe that. Did you think, now with podcasts being your main focus, has that happened? It sounds like it's happened really organically, rather than you always thinking podcast was the thing you wanted to do. I don't know. Tell me, did you always think podcast is something you wanted to do, and that led you to do Screw It, Just Do It, or?
No, it's funny, because when I, that Steve Jobs quote is always my favorite quote that I use. You can only, it's only when you look back you can actually join the dots. And I'm like, when I actually look back now, and the first job I did after university, when I did English and history, and the idea was, sat, National Union of Journalists exam, and I ended up at BBC Radio Wales in Cardiff. And I was like shadowing the news team to start with, and we were interviewing like Lennox Lewis, former heavyweight champion of the world, Neil Kinnock, shows my age, former leader of the opposition to Margaret Thatcher, and then that led me on to youth programming was what I ended up doing, and I kind of look back now and go, wow, I've literally come full circle, but it's been a really long journey. And was that part of the plan, and I just got taken off course, or who knows? But I definitely feel that I've, that it suits me, that I actually feel that I kind of own it. I know what I'm talking about without being, cocky or arrogant, because when I was doing a lot of the startup stuff and I thought about doing a startup course, and then I saw Piers Lenny, who I'd had on my podcast twice, and I've done a load of events with him, and he was like, I'm bringing out my startup course next week. And I thought, yeah, you can kind of own that, can't you?
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to go there.
No.
I guess, given all the changes in the career, kind of what 3 tips, I guess, would you give listeners about changing careers?
Really good question, and that's one of the ones I actually sat down and thought about, and it's very much of the moment, right now, and having come from working many years for the airline, which was absolutely amazing time in my life, where I met my wife, who gave me my children, who then I moved out of London to move where I now live in Poole in Dorset. So all those good things came of it, and all these people are going through redundancy, and I've had literally scores of really good friends with amazing memories that have all lost their job, and they all thought they were there for life because it wasn't a job for them, it was a lifestyle, it was their dream job. And clearly there was a process, but there seems to be some really commonalities, and it's funny, like I think 5 years, 10 years ago I would have looked at it very differently, but now I look at it with a business mind, and for me it looks like they've just taken the decision to get leaner and get younger, and at the time I wouldn't have seen it like that, but now I can see they've gotten rid of a lot of the part-time staff because it doesn't make sense for them to actually, the way that people work the system there, it didn't financially make sense for Virgin. And then they clearly want a younger workforce. So, and getting rid of those who are on a higher payroll to then bring in, they'll recruit again in a year. It happens all the time. It goes in cycles. So, we started this Facebook group called Not Just Crew, which is my friend's podcast that I alluded to earlier. And it just happens to be the timing. The timing was literally just to, share inspirational stories of people who used to be cabin crew or are still cabin crew who've gone on to do really inspirational things. But off the back of that, it's completely changed, and it's it's up to 2,000 people today, and in like a week, 5,000 people watched our video last week that we did, the live we did, and everybody's just asking for advice on careers. So it's really the fact that you asked this question, and I'm just saying to people, for me, a couple of things is, breathe, take a step back, breathe into it, take stock of the situation. That is the most important thing for me. Don't just go, and I've seen other people go, well, you could do this, and this, you could get this job tomorrow, and you could be Amazon are doing this thing, and you can earn money, and it's £100 a day. And that's really, I just thought, before you know it, you're in something you don't actually love, and you're 5 years down the line, and you're like, how did I get into this situation? So for me, it's actually, take a deep breath, take stock. And for me, there's an inner circle that I have that I will always ask for advice. And I know other people who don't, they just make the decisions themselves. But the way I work is I will ask people who I know will be honest with me, and not just yes people. Who actually would tell me some uncomfortable truths, but actually ask them, what do you see me doing? What skills do I have?
Because sometimes I think you can convince yourself that you'd be good at something or that you should be doing something, but that's just so many different things actually feeding in and making you think that. Whereas, an objective opinion from someone who knows you and has seen how you work and knows a bit more about what you might enjoy is can be a really good sounding board.
And point out skills that you might not think you have.
yeah, absolutely. And I think objective, that's the word I was looking for. That's the kind of people that you want. And for me, somebody we had on as a guest, she used to be cabin crew, she's called Ali Murphy, and she's gone on to form a ridiculously successful career as a voiceover artist.
Oh, wow.
She's been nominated for BAFTAs. She's doing all these ridiculously successful video games that everybody's heard of, and adverts on TV and audio books, all this kind of thing. And she said to me, the thing I did when I took redundancy from Virgin Atlantic, again, I think at the same time I did a decade ago, she invested in herself. She literally went, and I spent the money on a voiceover course, a marketing course, and a business course. She goes, I just spent that money on myself, investing in myself, after having worked out where my passion lies. And for her, I think it should be drama school, and she'd always liked that. And it's just a different version of that, isn't it, really, than being an actress? She calls herself a voice actress, which I didn't know was a thing, but I totally get now. So those are the kind of things that I would say, invest in yourself. And I think you guys probably agree with me on that one as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely the short-term thinking is a big no-no.
Yes.
As you say, is like take stock, and obviously funds and cash and stuff like that are an issue. See realistically how long you can survive without income, or if you get a redundancy package, how long that could last.
Yeah.
And I've changed careers a few times, from accounting to social enterprise to startup support, and now running my own business. That's been a big thing. In addition to that, it's just writing down, things that I like doing, and I think I'm running it past other people, similar to what you said. And you just get a bit of clarity on what you want to do, because you ultimately want to do things you enjoy.
Exactly.
Good at potentially, but if you're not good at it and you think you'd enjoy the process, go and find the courses and all that kind of stuff.
I think the investing in yourself has become bigger and like more and more of a thing, especially now when everyone's got time.
Well, it's so easy to do as well, isn't it? Like online courses is huge now. And I do a little exercise when it comes to people, helping them come up with an idea for their podcast. And I think you could do the same when it's a career, and it's literally just, blank piece of paper, split it in two, left-hand side, like Sam says, literally write down everything that you love and that you're passionate about. And on the right-hand side, write down stuff that you've got expertise in, and I don't necessarily mean qualifications, it's just stuff that you've learned through life, and literally just join the dots. Where are their commonalities? Like I love rugby. I've got a level 1 coaching qualification in rugby. Okay, maybe there's a career in rugby, or I love podcasting. I've got a number 1 podcast. I've got a podcast. Okay, I'll do something about podcasting. It's just so simple, but a lot of people just, they can't see the wood for the trees. And there's so much at the moment, people are, going through all those emotions, like that. A load of them have hired a lawyer now because they're angry. Another load are clearly in mourning, and another load, there's fear and there's anxiety about, and I didn't even think about this, but I've been, load of private messages from ladies who are like, where, ladies of a certain age, the other side of 50 who are like done this since they were, out of school in their 20s, and then like, that kind of imposter syndrome. Who would give me a job? What am I good at? And it's like, whoa, I didn't even think of that. And I'm like, we need somebody like that to interview for the show, to give, that demographic hope that there is, amazing possibilities and things you could do in your 40s and 50s. I'm living proof of that. I left Virgin when I was 39 because I always said I would leave before I was 40.
Wow.
And when redundancy came up, I said, well, there you go. I've got to go.
And you took the bull by the horns. Here we are.
Yeah.
So, odd question now. What are you most curious about?
Yes, that was one that I didn't come up with an answer for. So I'm just gonna play around with that one. I think in my head is. So I've been listening to a lot of podcasts by a guy called Andy Frisella, who invented the 75 Hard and has a podcast called Real AF. And he's just been talking a lot about race and politics on there. And I don't know, it's something that I probably haven't given a lot of thought about, because you just come from a background. Like when I was in school, there were two kids of colour in my entire school in Cardiff in Wales, and again down in Dorset here, again it's probably like 99.99% white, Anglo-Saxon, and he's just had some really interesting conversations around that, and he's brought on to his podcast, one of his co-hosts is now his head of security, who's like a really young black dude who's like 26, and he literally sounds like he's about 56, because the stuff that he's putting a different slant on is super interesting. And it's just made me really curious, and because I've just always thought, I've never understood what you would call racism, because I just see people as people, but it's clearly a far wider issue. And a friend of mine, there's another Virgin link, he posted up on Facebook yesterday that he'd been a DJ on Necker Island, and he'd come back because he'd met his girlfriend on Necker Island. She was a beauty therapist. They moved back. They were there when it got leveled to the ground. He's in Richard's book. There's a picture of him in the wine cellar with Richard sheltering from the storm. Anyway, he came back because he met this girl. She became pregnant. They thought, I don't want to have a baby on the island. So moved back to Bournemouth. And he posted up yesterday, Ben, saying he was literally in a queue with his newborn son, who was like months old, waiting to go into the supermarket.
Yeah.
And in front of him was, and I don't know who was who, but there was a pregnant lady with her husband, and they were of mixed race. And it said this guy was cycling past, stopped, and just launched vitriolic abuse at this family. And he just posted up going, I felt helpless. I had this baby in my arms. Everybody else in the queue was female and was just absolutely mortified. And he said, in the end, you know, somebody else came out of the shop who was male, who chased this guy off on a bike. But things like that have just made me, I don't know if curious is the right word, but I think, yeah, maybe it is. And it's just to kind of explore those issues, because you kind of look back at your own life and think, even though my parents split up when I was young, 11, that kind of age where, you start noticing a lot of things in life, really. And you realize that even though my mum worked every hour of the day to give us the best things in life, and we thought we had a normal upbringing, she actually worked her arse off, scraped pennies together and used like tickets on the back of Personal Automatic to, get us on travel holidays. But you kind of look back and go, well, actually, that was pretty privileged compared to a lot of people. And I'm just seeing what like Marcus Rashford, the Man United striker, have just got the government to change. 22-year-old footballer who've just been, again, had a load of vitriol heaped on them just because they happen to be in a job that pays a good salary. So, yeah, a bit of a long answer, but I'm just like super curious about all this because I've never spent much time looking at it,
It's a great answer, and again, of the times, it's something that it's not been brought to the minds of people who are not of color, so much so that at this point, and because again, everyone has more time to reflect, I think
exactly
everyone has got deeper into that topic and realized, oh yeah, what is it like? Or I don't understand, what it's like. And even me telling some of my stories to some people were just saying, God, I never realized that happened to you or happened to you. And yeah, I mean, why would they? And unless I told them. And now it's great that more and more people are talking about it, and the amount of amazing books and amazing stories that are, and interesting stories, and some horrible stories that are coming out. It's good that everyone's talking about it. Yeah,
it is. I think my only take is that I wish. It's funny, isn't it? People have had more time to reflect and think deeper about things, but then I also think people are. Maybe this is also to do with the pandemic and the mindset it's got, but people are scared to actually, and I'm the same, actually say something, especially on social media, because people are just jumping down people's throats and people are snapping, and it's just really reactive, isn't it? And I just don't like it.
Tense. It's tense.
I like it.
It's a tense
tense is the word.
And then something even more tense happens.
Yeah. It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like I'm the same. Obviously, Diana is black, and I feel very uncomfortable talking about it, and kind of start lots of chats with Diana to kind of figure out what's happening and how she feels. And I kind of get the impression that, kind of people of color are grieving really, because it's just their whole life seems to have just been a lot harder and loads of things happening, and that's kind of what's flowing out now, and they're frustrated, and that's why there is that kind of backlash sometimes.
Yes, a lot of emotions.
Yeah, and
there's a lot of emotion, isn't there? Yeah, there is.
So back to the podcasting. This is the podcasting section again of the interview. Podcasts are obviously exploding, and you've kind of jumped in to kind of help people set up their own podcasts. Why do you think it's so powerful? Why do you think they're so powerful for brands and people to kind of get them up and running?
Yeah, good question again. And I have thought about this, quite a lot, because podcasts have been around since 2004, and they've been peaks and troughs in popularity, but it literally has exploded now. And I think one is probably awareness, again, the media. I mean, I've had my show for over 3 years now, but there wasn't the level of press and publicity about it that there has been in the last year. And then literally, stats wise, January 2019, 500,000 podcasts. January 2020, 850,000.
Wow.
April the 20th, 2020, 1 million podcasts, says Apple. So, boom. That's massive growth.
Roughly, any idea what the percentage is between the US and the UK? Like, is it predominantly podcasts in the US, or is it spread all over?
Spread all over. And I don't know the answer to that, but I would like to. And I know, global listenership's up 10%, UK's 20%, France 30%, Italy 20%. So, and I think, the number of reasons for it, and obviously things like Joe Rogan getting 100 million for an exclusive contract with Spotify is only going to pour more attention on it. But I think definitely the competition amongst the tech companies has stoked that interest, because before you've literally just got Apple, owning the market with iTunes. So I think Spotify recognizing that if people are on Spotify listening to music, if they wanted to go and listen to a podcast, they'd have to jump off Spotify's platform and go over to Apple. Well, hang on a minute, how can we keep people on our platform? Let's do podcasts. So they did like a beta test, and you had to be invited to have your podcast on Spotify. And I was lucky enough to get invited to have mine on there when they did that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. And I just came completely out of the blue, to be honest with you. And I heard they were having I don't know what it was, but it was 1% of the market. But just seeing, what categories are popular. And then they specifically went out and spent $500 million on buying podcast creation companies, to have exclusive content.
Like, I think Anchor is by podcast.
Yeah, and then bought their own platform. Exactly. So that's targeted strategy. And then for Apple then to actually last summer shake up their categories and introduce more categories so that other people, could have different niches for their subjects, and then to rebrand it, which it hasn't 100% happened yet, but you literally go from, instead of iTunes, to go Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, and Apple TV. That's a play. And then meanwhile, Google Podcasts started indexing audio, so audio gets found in searches as well as video and websites now. So I think that's definitely helped. I think the fact that there are now it's probably I probably get about 7 or 8 proposals a day from either PR agencies or podcast promotion agencies. And clearly 5 years ago, there's probably never a thing called a podcast promotion agency.
Wow.
There's new jobs being created, aren't there? All the time. Just like when YouTube came along, I want to be a YouTuber. What the hell was that? Well, now everybody knows that.
So these are proposals for you to do podcasts for them, or to help them with their podcasts.
To have their guests on my show, and I think they trawl through the charts and see who's in the charts, and I quite a good relationship with quite a few of the PR agencies now, and they will put out to their clients, you could be so we've got this in the Telegraph, we've got this piece on Sky News, we've got this podcast, and it's wow, that's quite a sea change, really. And then the fact that a lot of those, say, influence or celebrities that you're actually influencing then start having their own show as well, that's just gonna multiply things. And I think one of the differentials for me is that, unlike social media, unlike YouTube, Netflix, Amazon TV, unlike all of those things, you can do other things whilst you're consuming a podcast, because you can listen to it. You can be, commuting in your car. And the fact that, the automotive industry, new cars that are being produced come with that purple button podcast, boom. That's only going to increase listenership. So I think, lastly would be, you do form an intimate relationship with who you're listening to. I kind of feel like I know Andy Frisella now from listening to his show. And I know people have approached me when I've done live events and said to me, listen to your podcast. How's 75 hard going? And how's your mum? And it's just like,
how do you know?
Mad.
Yeah.
People know you. People send you little, DMs and voice messages and stuff. I had one today. Funnily enough, someone was like touting for business, but they listened to my show because they referenced a couple of things within the last episode. So I thought, even if they've only listened to the last episode, they've done their homework.
Yeah.
So I think that intimate relationship, differentiates podcasts from a lot of other content, and it seems more accessible, I think, as well. Listen to it wherever you want, whenever you want, and whatever device you want. So all of those factors, I think.
I really like your point about the intimate relationship, because then it stops something just seeming like a brand or a far off business, and it becomes, as you say, like your friend, somebody you know.
I think that's why it's attractive to brands as well, because they can, it's their tone of voice, isn't it? If you kind of go into like the marketing side of things, it's that what's the voice of the brand and personality, and definitely.
Who's out of all the podcasts you've done, who's your favorite?
No.
2 or 3 people.
2 or 3. Okay. 2 or 3. I go 2 or 3.
How many have you done now? It's a few hundred.
I am just about to do 250 in about 3 weeks.
Oh wow!
Which is nuts.
That's quite a celebration.
I would say a recent one that I did, Alan Barrett from Grenade, is just hilarious. Just so funny.
Their story is phenomenal.
And it's just a crazy ass story.
Pounds or something, and nearly 70 million turnover. I saw you posted something.
Yeah, like they got like VC money for 72 mil 3 years ago, and now I just saw a magazine article saying, "Are they going to be the next $1 billion British brand?" And that wouldn't surprise me. But
or what stuff do they do? All I've seen is protein bars in shops, but do they do lots of other products also?
Yeah, so that protein, they started off with like protein powder, those big jars and stuff.
Yeah.
And then over time, you see other opportunities, don't you? And then they were like, actually, the size of the protein market is this, but if we got protein bars and we actually made them tasty, because most protein bars taste like crap, we could own the confectionery market. So they've now got the #1 chocolate bar in the UK. Which is not. And now they've just released an energy drink, which actually tastes really nice. Because I got a load of freebies when I went up to help them with their podcast.
I bet you did.
Came up with a case of stuff. And,
that's crazy.
His dream was always to be the sports nutrition version of Red Bull. So clearly, I reckon in the back of his mind, he always wanted to do an energy drink. It's just taken 10 years to go, do you know what? I think we could do an energy drink now. Because we got the chocolate bar, I think it's kind of an obvious, again, one of those purchases that sits, near the till and all that. But he's just hilarious. And I just think, again, it's just such an inspirational story. And there's, Virgin connection. He knows Richard really well. They've been to Necker Island a bunch of times. They've won like the Sunday Times Virgin Fast Track 100, I think. 6 or 7 times. And he's just so accessible. He's just so accessible. He flew all the way down. I asked him to come and speak at my event in Bournemouth, my annual event, and he literally flew down on his own. He happens to own his own plane. His passion is flying, so he can do that. But look, I only put him up in a hotel room. I literally just paid for a hotel room and put him and his wife Juliet up for the night, and just rocked up, did a talk, and flew back. So amazing. Birmingham. So it's good couple of hours away.
Oh wow! I need to check that out. I saw that person. I thought, God, what an amazing story. And you just know their bars being so delicious. I really need to listen to that.
And he just explains it really simply, and he just breaks it down so simply. Some people, myself included, I think, just overcomplicate things, and for him, it's just it's just dead simple, really is. And again, it's a bit like Richard. I always saw, always just employed people. He just says, I'm good at one thing. I'm shit at 99 out of the other 100. So I just employ other people who are better than that than I am. And it's just such a simple strategy, but it works.
The Lewis and the veterinary person. What was it like meeting Lewis? Just for me to know. you're my next step closer to meeting him. What was he?
Do you know the funny thing is as well is that and this always makes me laugh, and I'm always surprised by it, and I don't know why because it happens all the time. Is that his email is literally lewis@lewishouse.com.
No.
Yeah.
That is okay.
His PA literally copied me into an email and go, speak to Lewis directly on this one because he's trying to figure out, a bunch of different stuff and what's the angle, the Virgin angle he was clearly after. He was basically after, this is why I think he interviewed me, he wanted it to get Richard Branson on his own show.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's like quite pretty introspective, pretty deep, to be honest with you, which was not what I was necessarily expecting.
Yeah.
But and I was just really nervous. I just remember being really nervous, and I was again quite young into my podcast journey, so it would be a different conversation now. And again, I'm kind of coming up to that 250th episode, and I'm thinking I'd quite like to revisit other
previous
ones, because I've had Piers Linney on twice. I've had Jamal Easel, who we both know from Change Please on twice.
So I cycled past him about a week ago.
Really?
He doesn't know who I am. It'd be awkward if I said hello to him.
That's funny.
Yeah.
On that, because you kind of threw yourself into the podcast as we're kind of trying to do at the moment. How many episodes in did you feel kind of like, okay, I actually feel like a podcaster now, for want of a better? Did it take 5, or was it like 50 in? You're like, okay, I actually know all the ins and outs.
Yeah, that's a good question, and one I actually haven't thought about. So looking back, I think you're probably right. I tell you what it was. I think it's when I went to like 2 episodes, when I actually did my own solo episode, and I just did that by accident because I had a bunch of people cancel on me. I didn't have an episode to put out, and I had to put something out, so I just recorded myself, and I just did an episode on the commonalities in the rituals, habits of the guests that I'd had on at that point, because there are commonalities in these successful people, what they do. And when I look back, it was actually one of the 10 most downloaded episodes that year, and I was like, wow, that was one of those moments ago. People are actually interested in, they'll actually listen to me, not just with a guest. And I think it was, at that moment, and maybe it was something like about 50 episodes in a year of doing it, that I thought, do you know what, I actually feel pretty comfortable doing this. And that's when I went, right, I'm actually going to give this my undivided attention. I don't think I'm brilliant at it, but I think I'm pretty good at it. I'm actually going to go and see some of the other ones out there, and you go, okay, I think it's better than that. I'm actually going to try and get myself a #1 podcast, and that's what I set out to do in year 2 in January of that year. So
I love that kind of, you're being so humble about it, although you're obviously a brilliant podcaster, and then also that clarity of, okay, now I'm gonna give this my focus. That decision is really powerful. And just to ask about the rituals, what were the rituals that you found from the people you've interviewed, the ones that stuck in your
Yeah, so for me, the biggest one is literally having a morning and an evening routine, so that if you can, bookend your day, you're in control of those 2 bits of your day, and all hell can reign in between. But if you actually start and finish as you want to, you kind of feel that you've got some kind of balance in your life and some kind of control over it. And I've just picked stuff from people that I've had on my show and that I've that I've met, and for me, I now do I practice mindfulness every morning, and it's only 10 minutes, but that's how I start my day. So I do my gratefulness journal to start with, then I do mindfulness for 10 minutes, then I'll do yoga 45 minutes, which is twice as long as I want to do at the moment, but it's part of 75 hard, so I'm going to knock 20 minutes off that. And at the moment I'm going down and throwing myself in the sea.
What time do you get up at? You must get up at 6.
So I used to get up at 6, and then now I started waiting. I forget what it's like every year that, you know, even though I've got a blackout blind, I still see lights through the blackout blind, and it wakes me up, and I'm up, and it's 5 something. So I'm now getting up just before 5:30, and I'm awake, and I'm going down. We're doing a 7 a.m. swim club, just done day 18.
Wow.
And yes, it's cold, but it's amazing. I love it. It's just really so calm and peaceful when you go down there in the morning. It feels like I'm on holiday. It's weird. It's really weird. I was saying to the guys, and it's this little small group of us started doing it, and it's just nice. See more of my friends than, you know, I've seen for years, and it's only, we're not even there half an hour, you know, in total, getting undressed, dressed, and in and out. But it's just a great way to supercharge your day, really.
I really feel a lot of people are going to have really good habits after lockdown and stuff, like things like that. You wouldn't have even considered it when people are going to work. Their day jobs, like, oh, swim at 7.
No, I wouldn't have thought about doing it. No, wouldn't have even crossed my mind to actually go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Dream guest for your podcast. Who's the one you've been chasing for the last few years that you haven't quite snatched yet?
Yeah, so I would say it would be Andy Frisella.
Oh yeah, he seems to be the new kind of.
Yeah, that's before it was like Gary V, Tim Ferriss, but I haven't listened to those guys in so long now.
Yeah.
And I haven't chased them.
Yeah.
Richard would obviously be up there. Richard Branson. Yeah. Andy Frisella, I think, would be over anybody else at this point in time, just because I feel I've been on the journey with him by, you know, listening to his podcast and then doing his program 75 Hard twice.
And of interest is a little bit about doing the program that you want to be able to relate to him a little bit more and get him on the podcast as a strategy.
Yeah.
Is that part of the plan? Like, do you tend to do that for guests, is like spend a chunk of time kind of absorbing what they're about, and then you can relate to them, as you mentioned, a little bit more, and then hopefully that leads to possibly getting them on the show? Or is it just definitely and you know, I've thought about it, you know, more recently now, because I'm halfway through this phase 1 of the next stage, 75 Hard, which is like a 30-day thing, and I failed twice, and this is my 3rd attempt. Failed in March, failed in April, failed in May, and then tried it again in June. And we're doing it. So I've thought of about a better strategy to actually, you know, get his attention, and one of them, I think, is, and anyone's podcast, is to actually leave a review, like consistently leave a review. Yeah, because he will see that. Definitely, he will see that, because you know, even the most successful podcasts, they don't actually get that many reviews, even though it's the simplest thing in the world to do, because you're listening to it. You can just scroll down, but it's getting someone to take another action whilst they're actually consuming your content is the hardest thing with podcasting. It's the hardest thing.
True. That's a great tip. Just for everyone who's hearing, what's the 75 Hard Challenge?
So 75 Hard Challenge it's a mental toughness, not a physical fitness program, which most people think it is, but it comes with a lot of physical benefits. So it's basically instilling a load of habits, disciplines, consistency in your life, so that when you do face really tough times, you actually got the skills and the mental fortitude to actually persevere and just keep going. So it's exercising twice a day. Each one has to be a minimum of 45 minutes each.
Twice a day.
They can't be done back to back, and one has to be done outdoors, whether it's, you know, sun, you know, boiling hot sunshine, freezing cold snow, you know, whatever. You have to pick a nutrition/diet plan and stick to it. No cheat meals, no alcohol, drink a gallon of water a day, and read 10 pages of a self-help / entrepreneurship book every day.
Wow.
And then do 5 actionable tasks that will move you and your business forward. And then now he's done this phase 1, that added another 3 things on top of that, which is why I failed twice, because it was just hard trying to do everything.
Amazing. It's like an Iron Man for the
mind.
Yeah. So he added in having a 5-minute cold shower, hence I'm in the sea, which is even colder. 10-minute dedicated vision, which I find that's the hardest thing I find. Envisioning your goals, and you think that would be the easiest. I actually find that the hard, and that's the funny thing. Everybody finds something. Everybody's hard is different.
Yeah.
I had a friend who failed on reading 10 pages a day, whereas for me, I read a book a week. It's just like,
yeah, easy.
And then the other one is, what's the other one in there? There's so many. It's another 3 more actionable tasks, but in other areas of your life. There's a lot, like 8 actionable, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
On top of the exercising twice a day, reading a book, Yeah.
Well done you for doing this. Honestly, I'm so inspired. I'm just thinking I need to do 3 of those consistently a day at least.
So, yeah, I recommend it to everybody. It is bloody tough, but I would recommend it because that's where I then got a number 1 ranked podcast because I made it my number 1 goal. Then I did which you talked about with Sam before, my 5K, which became a thing for me, and
you ran a marathon.
That. And then I just went and ran a marathon. And if I hadn't done 75.5, there's no way I would have been able to run a marathon. In literally went from 3 miles to 26 miles in 6 weeks.
Wow.
So, there's no way I could have done that without having done it. Because it was just mental. Yes, it was physical, but it was mental.
Yeah.
It was mental. It wasn't physical.
Like with all that, I guess, just going on to the life part of the interview, like it seems like doing the 75 hard and just in general, you have a really good kind of foundation to your day. Like you have a kind of a ritual, there's a series of things you do, you're envisioning, you're keeping a gratefulness journal, which Dan and I have we do that on and off, just every few weeks we kind of feel we need to just spend time each morning doing that because it sets you in a really good stead for the day.
It does.
Is there particular habits out of those? Because it's quite a lot that you pack in the morning. 2 or 3 things that you're like, you think
have to do.
Everyone would benefit from.
Yeah. For me, I think the probably the biggest one that gives me like clarity and focus is my review and plan. So I literally just review the day. I will write down 3 wins, my 3 biggest wins that day. 3 things that I could do better, that could have gone better that day, and then I mark the day a win or a lose. Whether I won the day or whether I lost the day. And if you win, as Andy Frisella says, if you win more days than you lose, if you win more weeks than you lose, if you win more months, you win the year. Yeah. So it's just that small steps. 365 times you do that, you will win the year, and it's just 365 actions to move you forward. So I think if I would say one thing mentally, business personally as well, I suppose would be doing that. And then physically for me, like yoga's been a game changer, doing that for me. I've been doing that for a year now. I've done, just saw it today, 206 classes.
Wow.
Just started that, so that's pretty much nearly more than once a day, more than one every other day. So, but I'm now doing it daily. I've ramped it up. So that's just, again, it's quite mindful. It focuses your mind, focuses your mind on your own body and how it works and how it moves and where you're strong and where you're weak, where there's stress, where there's tension. It's just get more in tune. And again, I think it comes down to this bloody, lockdown, just get more in tune with yourself again and your surroundings. So I think that's one physical and one mental thing maybe that people could do.
I absolutely love the review your day, then week, then month, then year. I'm actually going to start that today because it
literally takes 5 minutes as well.
Yeah,
that's so the thing.
Simple.
It does.
Simple, but I think a lot of times, I find that you think, oh, where has this week gone? And it's all just lumped into this one big nebulous week. And actually, if you look back and you see your ticks and crosses, A, you feel like, oh, I've actually done quite a lot. And then B, next week you have more intention for what you want to do or catch up on.
It gives you confidence. Because, I think you just end up beating yourself up with, whatever. There could be one real thing you want to get done, but there's 15 other things that have gotten done that are progressing you to that one thing.
Exactly.
You totally don't appreciate it. So, the journey. Yeah. So is that kind of the last thing you do at night before you go to sleep? Or is it at the end of the working day? Okay.
Yeah, I want it to actually be the end of a working day. But it's not happening that way. So I'm doing it in bed a lot of the time. And then what I also do is just write down what my number one goal is. So what is the one thing? It's my favorite book. Can't remember who bloody wrote it, which doesn't say much for it being my favorite book, does it? But it's literally called The One Thing.
Yeah.
Need to get them on my podcast, clearly.
Yeah.
And if you write that down every day, again, that just focuses your mind on what you're trying to achieve. And there's a one thing for that year. There's a one thing for that quarter. There's a one thing for that month, the week, the day, and the hour that you're doing. What is the whole book is built on the premise of what is the one thing that you could do right now that would move everything else forward. So what is the big domino that knocks all the other dominoes down? And when you put it in that kind of term, my brain just gets it, just like
amazing.
And does that tend to be the first thing you work on then the next day?
That's the thing to do. Yeah. What's that? Is it Jim Rohn's book, Eat That Frog, the author? And again, it's just doing that one thing, the first thing in the morning, get it out of the way. Just don't. Otherwise, it's just hanging around all the time, isn't it?
Absolutely. And
praying on your
dragging it with you. There's a podcast. I mean, you probably have heard it. An interview we watched. I can't remember this guy, but he used to be an Olympic rower, and his question was, "What's going to make the boat go faster?"
Yeah.
You know it?
Yeah. Just been and why somebody else has just had. Oh, there's a couple of things. There's a couple of ways that's come up recently, but yeah.
And everything he did and everything the team did was what's going to make the boat go fast. And I just thought that was so simple, but
isn't it?
So powerful. Yeah, really.
Because there is, especially if you're setting up a business or a new project, there's always 50 things, and trying to prioritize what to do right now is very hard. So that is definitely a good strategy for that.
This leads really nicely in terms of creativity, because you've kind of talked about setting your mindset. How, are there any tools that you use to think creatively, or rather, what does creative thinking mean for you? I know you're saying you didn't even think you were creative before, but evidently you are.
Yeah.
If you were to think about creative thinking, what does that mean for you, and kind of how do you tap into that side of yourself?
Yeah, I think it's maybe just finding, expressing what you're passionate about, what you love. And I've just seen it, in so many different ways, because I actually did think about this question. And, I can see, for example, just, my girls, my two daughters, they love dancing. And, when you only get to see them like twice a year, actually publicly, dance, but seeing it, and, whether it's ballet or whether it's modern tap, it does move you, just seeing somebody, express things using their body and their arms and their legs and moving to the music. And clearly that's creative. Yeah. My friend Bella, she's a designer, and she had one of her designs that she'd say does like a children's coloring book, for example. She had one of her designs put on this building in LA, this huge hotel, it's 5-star hotel in LA. And I was like, wow. To have your work exhibited, in ridiculous size like that, that's pretty damn impressive. And she's the most creative person I know, I would say. But I think that even thinking of things like my nephew, my brother's boy Charlie, he's given up rugby, and he's always been trying to pushed into, you'll play rugby because your father played rugby, his father's played rugby, and he just wanted to act. And then he's now sings, and he just sang in front of his whole school at the age of 13. And I thought, to stand up in front of your peers at that age, and just sing. And he sung what's that movie, that musical that everybody was watching, Hollywood, with Wolverine was the lead.
Oh, The Greatest Showman. Yeah.
So he sang that. Wolverine. Yeah, I've never even seen that movie. So. But I think to express yourself like that in different ways is,
I completely agree with that. Yeah, I mean, to create is literally I think you kind of give a bit of yourself, it is a form of yourself in whatever it is you're creating, be it a podcast or, as you said, a song or a piece of art. It is that self-expression. But yeah, I think I would love to see something I've made on a massive building.
Yeah.
That's
it looked
insane.
amazing, I have to say. It did look amazing.
Okay, so on startups, we're kind of coming towards the end, so maybe just blast you with a couple of questions we haven't gone through.
Cool.
So just from a startup perspective, like you've helped hundreds from when you're working as a delivery partner, I guess, on the South Coast to what you're doing now, mentoring with Antler and lots of different things. What are things that you see founders focusing on too much and focusing on not enough?
Yeah, good question. I think they don't focus on enjoying the present, enjoying the actual journey, and maybe, I get it, we're all focusing on the end goal, but I think I'll try and keep it a bit more simple than that. I think, not enjoying the journey, not enjoying the present, just, over focusing on, what the ultimate goal is. Also, overly focusing on maybe the, that kind of short-termism, the financial, because I've done this, I can now go and buy the black Range Rover with a personalized number plate. I see so many of the young guys going down, this kind of route, and there's a lot more to it than that, and people, focusing on the financial, I think, rather than instead, focusing on those people who've built successful companies, put everything into, building a team and getting there quicker. That we're leveraging, other people, other resources. Trying to do too much themselves, which kind of leads into that question as well. I think, not handing off, not empowering their staff as well. Delegating is a massive one. I think a lot of people struggle with that one. So maybe there's a couple of things there.
Yeah, there's loads in there.
Out of interest, just on that, is your agency funded independently? Like, have you funded it all yourself, or do you have investors on it? And whichever one it is there a particular reason you've gone down that route? Because we're kind of self-funded ourselves, which means we have to do so much work ourselves. We have a team that's kind of grown organically, but it's probably taken a lot longer for us to get to where we could have been if you got funding at the start. But there's pros and cons to both sides. So are you consciously funding it yourself, or?
Funding it myself, like, organically, and I don't know, I've seen certain, again, like same as you said, hundreds of people end up starting a company because they're passionate about X, Y, or Z, and they've ended up actually spending all of their time trying to raise funds. Their full-time gig is pitching for investment. Just going around with a slide deck, pitching for investment, and I don't want to be doing that. And giving away, too much of their company too early on. So many people that I respect have said to me, keep on to as much of your company for as long as possible. So those are the, and I have been asked more and more lately about, have you thought about taking investment to scale it? But I'm not seriously considering it at the moment. No.
Okay, cool. No, that makes sense. Networking. I think out of everybody that I know, you definitely have a very, very strong network and connections, and like even just setting up the Facebook groups, thousands of people have joined. Like, what's the tips that you give for people out there, especially now, I guess, a little bit, because it can be harder virtually. But just networking tips would you give to people?
I'm gonna plug this in. Do you know what the funny thing is, and people don't realize this, I'm actually not a natural networker. If I walk into a brand new event that's not my event, I'm the one in the corner with cradling the warm beer.
Really?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. Whereas if I've got an intro to someone, I'm away. I'm like the best friend, And if it's my event, then I'm super confident. I'll just walk up to anybody and, say something to them. And I think it's just getting over that. And my mother's the complete opposite, because she was on her own from, I guess she was probably in her 30s, and she'll just walk into any room now and just walk up to you and go, "Hi, I'm Sandra. Who are you and where are you from?" She literally, and I'm just like, wow. To be able to do that. But we can all do that. It's just simple, isn't it? It's just like, a sentence, but it's, overcoming those emotions, feeling nervous, and maybe, the virtual networking is going to help a lot of people, get over that, the way things have been going. But it's funny. And people have said to me in the past, like mentors and stuff, said to me, do you know what what you actually do? Yes, you might create podcasts. Yes, you might help people start businesses, but you do all of those. But what you actually do is actually connect people.
Yeah.
Because I'll always introduce people to people, and I just think, maybe I'm completely missing my actual calling in life, and there's a business around there. But I mean,
So
for me, it's just.
Sorry, I was going to say, is it kind of that when you read something, your brain is going, oh, there's 2 people out there that might be interested in
Exactly.
So
Straight away. Yeah. Straight away. You want to be speaking to John, and you want to be speaking to Sarah.
Wow.
It's literally how my brain works. I don't know why, but that's the way it works. And I think, like I said, I'm not a natural networker. I never actually set out to build a network on LinkedIn or anything. That just happened with people messaging me off the back of doing, live events and then the podcast. And I think that the biggest thing, and it's the same when you're trying to get guests for a podcast, is just ask. Just put yourself out there, because only good things are going to happen when you put yourself in an uncomfortable space. See, it's a cliche, but it is the only time we truly grow is when we feel uncomfortable. It's like when you feel uncomfortable, you take that as a good sign. You're moving in the right direction. You're getting hotter.
Yeah.
Keep pushing yourself out there, So that would be like my one piece of advice for people who don't know how to network, don't know what to do, is literally do that.
Yeah, ask and be uncomfortable.
It's really, it should be a really good thing again from lockdown, just going back to good things about what's happening. I know there's tons of bad things, is that just now having video calls with people and not being like, oh, next time I'm in London, in your case, when you're traveling up from Poole, you can just say, hey, let's have a call next week.
Yeah.
But that's the new normal now, which is great, because that means you can connect with people all over the world.
That's what I'm planning on, literally, because it's like before, do you want to come to London next week? And it was just like, well, now we can literally do that. Before, people wouldn't go on the screen now, they would just do it on a phone, and it is a very different relationship, isn't it?
Yeah.
But now, certain things, I still get it. You will still have to meet in person, but I do think like 90% of that can be done. Virtually, yeah.
And you can get the life you want, but as you said, working more from home, which is.
I only found out yesterday. We hosted. I did a podcast for Dell. They own Zoom. They told me they own Zoom. I never knew that.
I did not know that.
As in 100%, or they just have shares in them?
Don't know. But he said, that's us. That's ours. Just like that. Really? Wow, you're doing all right then.
Yeah. Oh my God. Anyone who invested in Zoom at the time before lockdown would have been screaming it. Before we round up, I really want to ask you something, Alex. Not that I haven't already.
Take a deep breath.
With all the different careers that you've moved from, what made you realize, at what point were you like, no, this is not for me, and then were you like, I'm gonna try this? Just because they're so some of them are quite seemingly random and a bit disconnected. And I know you've gone the whole loop from BBC to back to podcasting, but just the in-between steps, what sparked that actually, no, I need to change? Because I think
the signal.
So many people struggle with hearing that and then following it.
Yeah. And then there was like logical progression, at least in my own mind, with with all of them. There was a moment. I think, I don't know if it's like you kind of felt that I always felt I was destined to do something else.
Yeah.
I've just always had that feeling that there was, and I knew, like with Virgin Startup, I knew that was a stepping stone to something else, but I didn't know, what that was. But when I actually trace it all back, like when I was at uni in Bath, I was coaching kids playing football on a Saturday morning, like for free. well, most people were probably nursing, hangovers from Friday night. So I was coaching kids, play football. And then in the summer, I was going over to America and coaching kids at summer camps. So I'd have like a log cabin for like 10-year-old boys that I'd have to look after. And then I'd be coaching tennis and football and canoeing during the day. And I always wanted to help kids, improve themselves, get better, realize their goals, that kind of thing. And it was when I had the sports injury clinics, and friends invited me to do mentoring for YMCA. And it was going to the schools and kids pitching their business ideas, and then we would mentor them and then sit on a panel and they'd pitch their ideas. And it was that moment that led me onto Virgin Startup, funny enough. It got me into, that whole startup entrepreneurship scene. And when I saw then a random post by, because that campaign ended, and I just literally the next day saw, scrolling my phone, a post by Virgin Startup looking for mentors. And I just thought, well, even if that means helping adults, that's still moving me in the direction of helping people, with their businesses and, bigger than that. And again, I've no idea, how I will end up doing that, but I know at some point that is like the calling, I think, and maybe like the podcasting part of it again. Every step of the way, even like when I had the sports injury clinics, that was helping people physically. So seeing a lot of people who were, for example, running marathons and getting repetitive strain injuries, that kind of thing. And I think if I look back, all of those, every single one of them has been helping people do something. So, yeah, interesting.
People do something, but I like that. I think what you said about I always felt like I was meant to be doing something else, but then it's listening to that and then going to what that next thing is.
Yeah.
And I think, like, it's safe to say you've always thrown yourself in fully into something, even if it could be quite early on. Like, I'm not sure if this is a long-term thing, but I get the impression that you've thrown yourself in and you get as much as you can from it. And then whatever the next thing you do is, you've learned and can apply things from the previous thing. Like, you haven't kind of gone half-assed and kind of gone.
No, I'm always all in. I mean, I always thought I was going to play rugby for Wales, but I got to about 36 and thought, the call's not going to come now, is it?
It's not coming.
Better do something else.
Yeah.
And I always wished I'd left Virgin Atlantic earlier, but I've just been, the last few years there, I was on autopilot, no pun intended. And I wasn't going out when I was in LA or New York. I was in my room researching business ideas. I wasn't going out with the crew and, going up the Empire State Building or getting smashed in a nightclub. I was literally just researching stuff. So I knew I wanted to do other things.
Yeah.
So, no, it's been, totally, like you said, I think the word, reinvention, and I have. But I kind of feel podcasting space, I'm comfortable in it. I don't feel like it's a bridge to something else.
No.
I kind of feel I'm kind of near the top of that, if that kind of makes sense. Obviously Joe Rogan's a completely different planet, but in this country at least, I kind of feel that feel confident knowing what I'm talking about and helping people.
What does the next 10 years look like, given the last 10 has been reinvention, well, more than the last 10, reinvention? What does the next 10 years look like for you?
Good one. So it's interesting. I did a bit of planning, a bit of brainstorming, and said to my wife, do you realize that in 7 years, in theory, both of our children could be at university and we will have the opportunity to do what we want again and actually travel again, like we did, say, with Virgin Atlantic. We had 16 years, traveling around, and our passion, one of our passions is traveling. And there's another thing to that. So I literally just said to her, if we reverse engineer that process, and which again is like me fighting against the agency kind of model a little bit, because again, a big takeaway during this lockdown has been, actually, do you want an agency or do you want to keep things smaller? you know, and for me, I'm more and more drawn towards the lifestyle side of things rather than building. Like guy I chatted to yesterday with FreshBooks, I interviewed the founder of FreshBooks, and you know, 400 people across multiple countries, and his day is 8:30 till 6 p.m. is Zooms
Back to back.
back to back, and I was just like, I don't want that.
No.
No. So for me to go, you know, my ultimate dream is to have, you know, which will happen, is to have a ski chalet. And I had somebody approach me the other day to do an interview, and he was like, I'm American, but I now live in Switzerland. I've got these 3 businesses and I ski 100 days a year. And I was like, that is my goal, is to snowboard 100 days a year. So
that's
amazing.
Really
I love that.
Because it is, I think a lot of people don't think that kind of thing is possible, where you actually think, what do I want in my life? And reverse engineer it, as you said. What do I need to do to figure that out? How much money might I need? Do I need to earn 150k a year? Could I earn 40k in a less busy job and have more time, or could I set up my own business to earn sufficient amounts? Like, it's really
well, do you know what? I interviewed someone for my podcast called Louise Croft, and it was called Digital Nomad Girl, and she was my next but one neighbor. Her and her father both do online courses, and he told me that in December she made 24 grand. She's not even 30 yet. 24 grand from her courses that she doesn't even market.
Wow.
So they sit on Udemy. She's like, I'm not interested in learning how to market. I just want to make a course. It takes me a day to market it. Sorry, a day to make it, and maybe 3 days to edit it, post it up there. And her and her husband travel around the world. They bought 2 ski chalets in Georgia. They were like, you know, sod buying somewhere for a couple of million in the Alps. You can have the same lifestyle, but just in another country. And I was like, wow, I love it.
It's life hacking.
Yeah.
The tools are out there. Once you get to the sense of what you want to do, it's like, it's so possible to do it now. It's phenomenal.
I love that a lot. I think that's
just gotta manifest it. Yeah.
What's the best place for
sorry, who's asking the question?
What's the best place for people to connect with you and find out about all the different things that you're doing?
Yeah, so easiest I always think is LinkedIn, which is at Alex Chisnall. That's where most people tend to find me. Email if people want to. Obviously, the podcast is Screw It, Just Do It, and people can listen to that. And the email is alex@screwitjustdoit.org. So yeah, rather confusing. That's probably the easiest. That's the podcast, and that's LinkedIn. And you know, you can find me with regards to the podcast agency, the podcast course, the mentorship I just started, all of those kinds of things. Yeah.
Amazing. Nice. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
You're welcome, guys.
It's been
awesome. Great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, really, really awesome. I'm thinking my 2 takeaways: do that journaling of the review. 100% going to do that. Owning your day. And then Screw It, Just Do It podcast. It's awesome. Need to listen to the latest episode.
Nice. Cool. All right. See you, Alex, and thank you all for listening. I should say, check out at Creative Jungle Co. on Instagram and creativejunglecompany.com for details on what we do also.